Mr. Klein, will you provide us with the invocation,
I
please?
sure will, thank you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the things that you've enabled us to do here tonight and what you will continue to enable us to do. We ask that you will bring intelligent ideas to mind, that you will bring good questions forth so that we can do for the Sumner County residents what we were elected to do and what we desire to do. And we ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Okay. Before move to approve the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda as follows. Item 1 under report of, I would like to add item 1 under the report of the Budget Committee Chairman to add a note on policies and procedures relevant to transfers and appropriations, specifically the library board, but also more broadly. Secondly, actually, that's the only one I'll do for budget. Everything else, I think, we can pull out. Yeah. Any other amendments to the budget or to the agenda? Okay. So can I have it without objection? I'd like to approve the agenda with that one addition under my report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty. We did have a couple people sign up to speak.
That is to the left of you. I said.
Oops. Here we go. Miss Diane Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Diane Johnson. I'm part of the Sumner County Library Board, as you know. I've met all of you before.
Could you state where your location
Oh, I'm
is for
sorry,
the record?
143 McCain Crossing in Hendersonville.
Thank you, ma'am.
The reason I wanted to spend just a few minutes tonight to speak is because the Library Board meets every other month. Our last meeting was in November, and the next meeting will be the middle of January. Part of your agenda tonight was to talk about some library budget transfers, pages 160 through 166. I know the library directors have spent some time putting together with the former executive director these library requested transfers, but this should have gone to the library board. The library board still needs to decide the future of the library system. And at the November board meeting was when the former library director resigned. A day before she left, all of these budget transfers, several pages of them, were received in the finance department. So I would ask that that part of this agenda be removed, not deferred, but removed, because the library board must meet first to decide the future of the library system. And until that can happen, these transfers cannot take place. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address them, but that is what I would like speaking from the library board as a member. This needs to be tabled.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Miss Katie Brown.
Good evening. I'm Katie Brown. My address is 107 Timberline Drive in Hendersonville. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here actually representing the school board, and I know that there's an item on the agenda, item Roman numeral 5F, is in the education committee amendment that passed this time. It's up for old business because it didn't pass in the first time it came before the committee. And so I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm here. I oversee the LEAPS after school funding that is on the agenda. Mr. Brown, who is not here this evening, I understand is on this committee, did submit an email question to Dr. Phillips, and I responded to him. He submitted that over the weekend, and I responded to him today. And so whenever the appropriate time for discussion is, I would love to share that answer or answer any questions for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. I'd entertain a motion now to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, move on to my report. So I added this at the last minute here. And I think, Ms. Johnson, this is going to address your note. I'd like to entertain a motion to discuss policies and procedures relevant to the library board transfers and appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Mr. Hyde, I believe you had some commentary on this you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ms. Johnson on this. When I heard about this, I was really amazed that you could amend your budget by this amount of money and never go through a board. There's got to be accountability. I have since that time talked to Mr. Lawing, and Mr. Lawing, having been with the state before in auditing, is in total agreement that this is just not appropriate in any way without going through a board or the committee in control, just for accountability purposes. And I know I have talked with you about it and gave you a statement that would help correct this issue. And I'm not a member of this committee, but I would certainly make that as a motion. We just need to defer all of this until the library board sends something to us, or send it back to them and ask them to review it and send it back to us with action by the full board.
So I think, Mr. Hyde, there are two items here. The first is that I'm going to entertain a motion on, and that is to read this statement and adopt it to send forward as a rule. And the second one is, which we'll deal with later, is actually the existing request. So I think there are two things of discussion here, and one of them we can handle now, one later.
Yeah, we need to adopt that first, and then it'll take care of the other.
Well, fair enough. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then with this, I would entertain a motion to adopt this statement as a rule. The Sumner County Budget Committee will not approve any amendment or transfer for any library without it first being approved by the Sumner County Library Board.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Becker?
Where is that statement gonna live?
We can build a document for the rules of this committee. I don't know that we have one. It's pretty simple. We just maintain it here. And I actually think this is probably a rule that makes sense, except in emergency, for, emergency items more broadly. That things should come from there.
We generally post them on the finance website, so we'll
That's
post
fine.
it up there for you too. We posted the $5,000 rule and all the
Yeah, that's
rules
right.
reside. They reside on the finance website if they go under budget or general accounting. So we'll post it there for you.
So does the motion include language of unless there's an emergency or?
No, just for now, just the library. I'm going to keep it as it is.
Okay, so even if there ever was an emergency with the library, it wouldn't.
I mean, I'll entertain.
I don't
it.
know what would constitute an emergency.
I'll
with the library.
I'll entertain an amendment if you want to.
No,
I don't think, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that the state would recognize an emergency sending $73,000 worth of amendments to a budget. Would you, David?
These wouldn't be an emergency by looking
Yeah,
at it.
I'm not
You just mean
suggesting
as a
these are-
rule.
I'm telling you, if we're gonna bake it, if we're gonna create a rule, which I'm not opposed to, if it's just a black and white,
How would you suggest amending
I
it?
don't know, first time I've heard of it, so.
So-
I hadn't had any time to think about it, so.
I mean, it's a rule. Here's where we can.
Can I speak on this?
They can call it.
Sure.
Violate protocol.
Yeah, go ahead.
So.
Who-
that-
who are you,
I'm
sir?
sorry,
And where are you from?
My name is Alan Morales. I am the manager, or whatever we're calling me these days, at
And-
Hendersonville Public Library.
where do you-
I live at 166 Woodlake Drive in Gallatin. So we're not asking for any money. This is money that the commission has already approved, right? And it's divided out into two sections. One is operational costs and one is personnel costs. If the amendments don't get approved, it's gonna affect our ability to do some things because the system was handling some of the expenses. And so we don't have money in certain line items. For example, one of the line items that I think the finance director could probably speak better to is, I believe it's data processing for like Hendersonville. We don't have any money in there because the system was taking care of that. We need money in there like to purchase things like ink, which we just did, and I was kind of counting on that we were able to have access to that money to do the regular things that we do. So in the past, and by the way, this whole budget went to the library board in the past. So, and the chairman of the library board is aware, and I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that we were going to have a conversation about this at all. I only came because we're required to come when there's something before the committee. So if the committee has any questions about any of those kind of things, we would do the best we can to answer those questions for you about why that is being moved around.
So thank you for that, and Mr. Hyde, I believe you're in queue here.
Well, having dealt with budgets as both a superintendent of schools and director of schools that involve millions and millions of dollars, I never found it necessary to illegally amend a budget, which this was done. You don't amend a budget. If a person is qualified to head an organization, they should be able to foresee needs to amend the budget, bring it to budget, amend it properly, then you have your money. I don't understand how you can just think that an administrator, I would have loved that as director of schools, I would have loved to have just taken money willy-nilly from everywhere in the budget and moved it around. But this is not going to happen.
So I think, I appreciate your comments. I think right now, we're just on the rule. And it's a rule, if we need on this committee to, here's an amendment I'll make to it.
Yeah, let's vote on the rule.
Well, hold on, here's what I'll say. The Sumner County Budget Committee will not approve any amendment or transfer for any library without first being approved by the Sumner County Library Board. If this committee deems that there is an emergency need for funds, the committee may vote unanimously to approve. So it will require a unanimous approval for an emergency. That's your catch clause. Does that work?
Basically, the rule for the second reading.
Yeah, it's very similar to the second reading. Does that satisfy your question, Mr. Becker?
It does.
Okay. Can I
Is
get,
that what-
who had the second on that?
I make a motion.
Oh, did you?
I had a second.
I had the second,
Would you entertain that motion?
Yeah.
Any other
I'll
second?
still second.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? So what's the motion on the table is for the amended statement with the emergency clause to if we have a unanimous vote. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Mayor, any report?
No, I just address items as they come, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Mr. Long?
The first thing I have is a revenue analysis, and we actually passed out another one because made the nice red highlighting for the negatives, but it made it hard to read for the committee, so we passed out a second sheet. When you compare this to last year, our variance from budgets has actually improved. As you go down the lines, we actually have the loaded property tax rolls, which helped, and then sales taxes is looking very good in several of the other revenues. All in all, there's nothing really surprising. Things such as bankruptcies and interest and penalties are down, but the tax in itself is up. One that we are way off right now is clerk and master's collections, but that's because we're in the process of changing law directors and they're involved in those tax cases. There's probably some slowdown in there, so nothing to really be alarmed about. But does anybody have any questions on the revenue analysis? Okay. Item 2 is the COVID rules, page 12 and 13. These were explained to the former budget committee, but talking to the budget chairman, he thought it was probably a good time to go over them again because of a couple of reasons, and I'll go through those real quickly. On page 12 is the actual premium pay rules. These are the final rules from the U.S. Department of Treasury. A couple of things that are important. The first one is anybody's premium pay cannot be above $13 an hour. We have verified that. Nobody's premium pay is anywhere close to $13 an hour. The number 2 rule is nobody's premium pay can exceed $25,000. When the original plan made with the premium pay, it was to step it back. If it stepped back this year, that shouldn't be an issue, but for instance, if the premium pay was left at the same percentage, we're projecting somewhere around 27 employees would pass the $25,000 mark and have to be covered locally this coming year. So that's based on the original plan was to step it back, and that shouldn't be an issue. But if that plan's changed, then everybody should be aware there is a $25,000 limit that we would surpass. Down there's just a few other things. Anybody above 50% of the state's average does require justification. We are working with the consultants, and we have justification for every employee that is over the 150% rule. But these are the rules, the most pertinent part out of the actual federal regulations. I know I'm speaking quickly, but does anybody have any questions?
No questions. I think the most important part of this is going to be relevant to discussion later is the $25,000 cap.
And actually, was in yours, there's actually a list without anybody's, mine has names, but yours doesn't have names, and that shows you, one will pass it, but if it's 25,000, if we didn't change it by 6, and the lowest was off by $155. The next item, the 2 items that go to county commission is the first is the cash flow for the highway department. Compared to projections, we're in very good shape. Not saying the cash flows are wonderful, but they are better than projections, so we don't have any concerns at this point. And then item 2 is just to inform the county commission that on the county commission meeting, the November financial statements will be available for the full county commission. And that is, I think items C and D do need to be sent to the county commission for docketing. I don't know if we usually vote for docketing?
I don't know that we need to vote for docketing.
To send them on forward, we need to vote on to send them to docket.
I don't think we need to vote for docketing.
Just a report.
I'll move.
I think it's always better to vote.
So move.
We have a second.
Group and approve C and D.
C and D,
Second.
I moved to group and approve C and D.
Second.
All right.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
End of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to old business. Mr. Klein, going to be relying on you for an update on some of these. On item A1, funding for the new health department, any movement on this?
No.
Okay. Item number 2, funding for the new EMS building near New Shacklon, any movement here?
None.
I have a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I move to dispose of items 1 and 2 to postpone them until our budget cycle, our budget discussions. Like I said, we have two years to even determine what we want to do with those, any ARPA funds, and then 2 more years to execute those funds to 2026. Specifically, I know the Shackle Island being my spot and hearing some of the stuff in the emergency services, it sounds like there might be even a greater need for a different location for some funds here. So I think we definitely need to, there's not an emergency for this right now that I see. So I'm making a motion to postpone these until the budget cycle.
Second. Any discussion here? I would just.
Now we remove this off of old business.
No, right, we would remove it and then it would come back and.
Correct.
That's 1 and 2.
Yes.
1 and 2.
I move to group and approve 1 and 2 to postpone them until the budget cycle.
You okay with that as the
Yes,
second?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion here?
Brief question real quick. You and I talked about this. The health department right now is infested with termites and they're concerned about it. I mean, has anything been done about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor has hired a termite company and
Has it been treated?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there, I just wonder, is there a warranty, are they protected that if they come back, will they have it, can they just call that company and have them come back out and remediate any problems?
Yeah.
Is there yearly renewal with that they can renew the warranty each year?
I'd have to double check on the yearly.
I'm not trying to put you on the
Yeah.
spot, I'm just
No,
want to make sure
we
that.
had it treated, it comes with all the applicable warranties.
And Hal Hendricks met with them and they
So I just
took
don't
care
want
of
them to
everything.
have to come back if there isn't a warranty and have to do
Yeah.
this whole thing over, so.
Commissioner Mansfield, on your motion, could you consider taking item number 3, since those two are moved back to budget, and it's to do with item 1 and 2 to actually pull it? Because it was really talking about the 1.5 million excess on elections.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to group and approve 1, 2, and 3 if the secondary will.
Agree.
So moved.
Any other discussion on this? I would only note that I agree with this, as I think that this needs, and I've spoken with Mr. Miller on at least one of these. I think the idea here is that we're gonna just take a step back and come back with probably a different plan.
Reassess the needs.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, any other discussion here?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
So, I'm completely, I agree with 1 and 2, and can you help me on number 3? I'm not saying I disagree, but I don't understand what does that mean?
Number 3 was the discussion, there was the extra money from the election machines that weren't gonna be used to be used for these other 2 buildings, so they're already tied together.
Oh.
So we just remove it, and then the other discussion, our office has sent an email to Miss Ashley to ask for the contract from the state and the, and/or HAVA where the election machines have been funded. So this, election machines, if that's been funded, should be completely pulled off anyway from your whole ARPA comparison.
And so that, the delay with the ARPA funds, there's no issue with waiting off.
You've got to December 31st, 2024 to commit and then to spend to 26.
Okay.
The only caution is once you commit, we need to make sure, if we do it that really late, that we commit completely, because after we've reported the commitment, we have to stick to it. That would be your only concern. So you probably want to do it if you do the 25 budget as soon as you can after that to keep away from it as much as you can. But you're still fine if you do it at the 25 budget cycle.
But basically, it's the COVID slush fund effectively.
Right, but you really need to have it, Buck, if you waited to December 31st, 2024, you need to have it completely tied down. It could go down, if it goes down, then we just lose those funds if we committed, I don't know, 100,000, so we gotta be careful of that.
Does that make sense?
Otherwise, there's no issues.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion of the board to group and approve the removal of items A, 1, 2, and 3 until the next budget cycle? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. So item number A4, Oak Grove Volunteer Fire Department. This is $18,000 for a survey and geotechnical. So I remember this discussion from last time. Actually, I'm going to open this up for discussion, entertain a motion for discussion.
I'm going to move to refer this back to general ops. I've requested basically so they can come up with a scope, because they didn't do that. As far as what, statement of need, initial and estimated initial costs, any alternate solutions and reasons for the proposal, recurring expenses, any associated contracts or agreements. I'm requesting those from general ops.
Emergency Services has already voted to send it to General Ops to do all the legwork past it.
But they voted to send it to budget last week.
The budget denied it last month and sent it to Gen Ops. So it's under Gen Ops, that's the heading Gen Ops for
Yeah.
consideration. We just kept it under your old business, that way when it comes back, you know it's being
Okay.
considered.
Yeah, it was, that was voted down specifically. Health Emergency Services voted to send just the project as a whole with their stamp of this is a project we should look into to General Operations, who will then send whatever scope they come up with to here. But the actual geotech survey, that was voted down last month.
Right, so technically, we just put it under old business for this discussion, but you could vote.
Yeah, I thought we
Voted
voted
completely
this
off
down.
of old business. You could just completely vote it off.
I mean,
old
do we need
business.
to vote it off because
Yes,
we
well,
voted it down?
You
So we
voted it
just
down,
remove
but
it?
also voted to send it back to Gen Ops. So do you just want to vote it, just want to remove it from your agenda? We just remove it.
If it's gonna end up taking 10 minutes every meeting, let's just remove it.
Yeah, let's just remove it. I don't think we need to vote to do that. It's sitting with you. Let's just remove it. I don't
Okay.
think we need to vote to do that. Retract your motion, because I'm just gonna remove
Yeah, I
it.
can retract my motion.
All right, great. Item number B under old business, Mr. Long, any
That's-
notes on
that's-
page 17 here? Oh, this is, we've hashed this a lot.
It's just illegal right now, it's waiting pending action.
Got it.
Nothing to do at this point.
Mr. Mayor, any notes?
Well, you had asked for a presentation on it. I'm willing to waive that if you've got legal working on it. Y'all can look at the law,
says
or I can show
legal.
you the law.
Ben?
Someone apparently grabbed one of the extra budget ones. I don't have my own agenda.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I've been trying to sneak peeks off yours
It's-
the whole time.
Just unselected material.
I think the original discussion was,
Oh, from the different
cities.
So, my understanding, and I'm sorry if I was mistaken, that the mayor was speaking to them and we were going that route first. I didn't realize that we've moved on to.
Actually, that's where I thought it was. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead if you got any notes
Yeah,
on this.
I've spoke with a couple of the cities, I think 3 in particular. And one of them mentioned the AG opinion, which I'm providing to him, and I will show you the AG opinion. But this is basically the law right here. And it's in the absence of any agreement between the city, or between the county and the cities thereof imposing a property tax, local cost of reappraisal of properties within the city shall pay 1/2. And then, of course, 1/2 by the county. So that's on real property. Now, here's the agreement that we've had over the years. If you look at that last statement, shall pay those costs during the fiscal year in which the reappraisal is finalized. Reappraisal is a process. It's either a 2, 4, or 5, or excuse me, a 4, 5, or 6 year process. And instead of putting all of these costs on the cities in the final year, we have over time just built them each year. And every city is paid each year up until this recent time. The next component of it is the personal property, and that's a little more complex. They've got a specific formula that you use, but the long and the short of it is that they still have to pay that as well. The AG opinion is basically that the cities are required to contribute to the reappraisal cost attributed to that city. And the way we do that is by the parcel count in May. And I will show you the actual calculation. Let's see, the burden of all of this stuff is fluff. So we'll go straight to the calculation. And all we do is we have the budget and then divide that out, and then you'll see where the parcel count of each city, and that's how it's calculated. And it basically just tells you, if you look at the current budget and the total parcel count of the county gives you the cost per parcel, and then that's divided in half and attributed on a pro rata share to each city. Now on this one, you'll see that not only we've got the real property right there, and then we also have the personal property, which is a separate calculation, but for this sheet, make it easier for the cities, we just put them together, and that way they can see that. Here is the calculation of tangible personal property, which is an Excel spreadsheet and has the calculations behind the sales. So we can go through that, but I think that that's probably a little more time. Let's see. Let me show you the AG opinion. This came out November 15th of 2017, and basically it's payments of local costs for reappraisal. The first question, does Tennessee Code annotated 67.5/1601 grant authority to a municipality to unilaterally contribute an amount less than 1/2 of the amount that the county taxpayers have spent? And the opinion is that you are required to pay 1/2 of the local cost. City and county may agree on something different, but you cannot pay that, and you cannot pay a different amount other than what's calculated unless an agreement is made between the city and the county. And what a lot of this is born from, just to give you the facts on it, MTAS has come to the opinion, that's the Municipal Technical Advisory Services, has come to the opinion that these are services we're already doing, therefore we shouldn't have to charge the city for them, since we're already doing the job. And then there's a secondary argument that not everything we do in that office is attributed to the reappraisal process. Both of those, in my opinion, are flawed. Everything that office does contributes to the value of the property for reappraisal. On that reappraisal process of 4, 5, or 6 years, and Sumner County currently operates on a 5-year. CTAS is of the opinion, and they actually use this presentation in their consulting. They're of the opinion that they are responsible for 1/2 of those costs. So that's where the rub lies. I've spoke with a couple of cities, and they were not aware of this AG opinion. I sent it to them, but I told them I'll send it to them again, refresh their memory. And they said if the AG opinion says we pay it, we're gonna pay it.
Okay.
So let's try down that route and see if they'll pay it based on that opinion. Otherwise, y'all can figure out which action you want to take. That's strictly a financial issue that y'all would do.
So, I think what I'm understanding here is that you believe at this point that, given this, this information, that they're likely to pay these and to just leave this on
Get
old
this
business for
settled.
another 30 days, or for another cycle.
I think we can get some
Okay.
groundwork laid with them.
So we will take no action on this one unless anybody would like to make a motion otherwise. Thank you for that update, Mr. Mayor. And hopefully we'll get there.
I hope so.
We'll
I'd
see.
like to get it off the agenda.
Yeah, no kidding.
Item C here, budget carryovers. So one of these, I guess we can take these each at a time, and then some we can group and move. But item number 1, the Archives and Administration Building roof. I'd like to entertain a motion for discussion on this one, to get a report from Mr. Klein.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Klein, can you give us an update on this, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Moss and I bonded last week on the roofs of several of the buildings we own in the county. And the primary one was the Archives building. And after several hours of climbing through ceilings and on top of the roof, we determined the roof is not the problem. There's a parapet wall that runs the perimeter of the building, and it's a vertical wall that supports the very extreme raked roof that the shingles are on. That is sided with vinyl siding that is completely warped, has been heated up, it's deformed, and there are penetrations in it that literally every leak in that building is directly underneath that vertical parapet. So the I think it was $450,000 that was budgeted for that roof. If we only have to replace the vinyl siding up there with something else, will be radically less. Couple of the things that we need to consider, or one of the committees needs to consider, maybe it's my general ops committee, but the handrail that's up there, the Widow's Walk handrail, is in horrible, horrible shape. And it's not like this building where it's not sitting on a curb. There's a C-channel that is set back from that parapet wall, and that handrail is sitting on top of it. So it's not leaking at the handrail. However, the brackets that go into the vinyl siding that hold that C-channel up are leaking. And so the handrail is falling apart. I believe that Commissioner Moss would agree with me that we should probably remove that handrail, just, it, it needs to be painted desperately, it needs to be reattached, it is broken away from some of the verticals. And so, depending, and I'm not sure where to go with this because I'm so new at it, I can write a letter of recommendation. I did get one from Kim Norfleet, that's from September 29th, 2020. I agree with a lot of it, I disagree with other parts of it. So depending on, you know, what this committee would like, I will write a report, I will get it's actually not a roofer that I want up there. I need to get a, you know, maybe a building inspector up there.
So, I guess I mean, you clearly, and thank you for that very detailed report. I mean, you clearly have a very good understanding of the problem. I feel like at some juncture, we've got a leak, and we need to make some kind of movement.
Okay.
And I don't want to take, you know, I don't want to usurp your authority down in at the Gen Ops, but is there any kind of, do we have an idea of maybe setting aside some kind of funds?
Today Commissioner Moss went up there and he was going to run some tests with caulking on, there's one office that the water is working through a fluorescent light fixture. And we saw where it was coming through, and one of the maintenance guys several years ago had actually gone to repair it. And I think the repair has given up because it did stop it for a while, but now it's started up again. So Terry was going to go ahead and recaulk that, and there's one place that we suspect maybe the roof is a problem. He was going to flex seal that, and we'll know a lot more next time it rains. But the threat has been water is dumping in the archive building, and that's simply not the case. There are a few leaks here and there. Some of the leaks have stopped. There's stained ceiling tiles, but there are no active leaks in some of the spots. But we're 99% confident that our assessment is correct, and I'd like to give Commissioner Schmidt up there as a professional building assessor.
We can assess. As long as, I just want to make clear that we're not going to be paying Commissioner Smith to do that.
No.
And, okay.
I don't want to
Paying
send it.
Commissioner
I got
Klein
it.
or Commissioner
So,
Moss.
just to be clear, so you believe that as of today or tomorrow, that the leak will be sealed?
Well, we'll know if it's sealed the next
The
time
next
it
time it
rains.
rains.
Yeah,
And what about the one where it's coming into the,
we'll know about that one too.
okay. And so your recommendation is to take no action on this until we
Yeah,
see?
we will write a report,
Okay.
and we will use any information off of this report from Kim Norfleet.
So
Okay.
you're gonna have county maintenance to seal it to see if that's where it's leaking?
Yeah.
Temporary?
Yeah, and he should have been up there today.
So if we end up replacing that, because it'll probably be over $10,000, we'll have to bid it, and then the same thing that we always have the argument, there's that statute about engineers and architects, really requires an architect or engineer over $25,000.
Yeah, at 25,000.
And I've had arguments, several times it shouldn't on a roof, but I've been told it does.
So the finding, I just want to be clear here for the county mayor. The finding that you have is that the roof is not leaking,
Right,
that the leak is on the siding on the upper part of the wall,
right.
and that you believe has been mitigated, and we will find out, the next time it rains, and that you'd recommend you're going to write a report and we take no action until the next
Correct.
committees.
Correct.
30 days or in January.
Yeah.
Is that the recommendation?
That's-
Is it, would anybody like to entertain anything different? Any issues? Okay, so no action. So that's item C1. Unless you have, I'll go ahead and go through each of these. C2, hazard mitigation.
Is that on the Cottontown property we're talking about?
It's hazard mitigation grants, it's down in Gen Ops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
We're still researching that.
Okay, So, do we, all right, I would, is this gonna come up next time? Is there anything that's gonna break because of this? I'm just trying to remove stuff from old business if we don't need to.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on that. if I
Go
can.
ahead.
How much FEMA grant money has been received thus far for these two projects?
I can't remember off the top of my head, off the top of your head. I've got an email, I can pull it up in a second.
Just the appraisal.
We'll get you an answer, Mr. Wynn. I'm gonna, just in the interest of time,
All
I'll
of
give you
them
March.
in there.
200,000?
That we spent.
Oh, we spent, yeah, we haven't received.
We haven't
it.
received.
Yeah, we haven't received
So
it.
we were set to receive it back. In other words, we haven't received what we were set to receive. I believe it was 200, but I
So
can't.
the answer is 0 at this point, right?
No, we've received some, very little though.
It's like 1,500
Yeah.
for an
We-
appraisal.
We've received very little back, but we've expended, I believe it's around 200,000 that we were expecting to get back. But I can't, without pulling up my email.
So we'll get you an answer on that, Mr. Wynn, and fair question. Okay, so this remains at Gen Ops. Same question on the HVAC projects. This one, it says, we're waiting estimates from the mayor's office. Is that correct, or is it sitting with you?
I was going to assess all of the heating and air conditioning equipment that was in question, because recently it's come up that a lot of it is very old, and we had a meeting at the mayor's office last week, and we talked to the group that handles all of the heating and air conditioning equipment of all the buildings in the county, and we have several facilities that we need to change out just because of the Freon.
Okay.
And so,
Actually, let me do this properly. I'm gonna entertain a motion, just for discussion on item C3, because we're,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Mr. Mayor, you're in queue. You're opposed. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
You want me to not say anything?
I get outvoted.
No. Kind of bring you up to speed, Commissioner Klein and I did sit down with Comfort Group. We've got several issues that are pretty significant. The first one's not significant. That's the set points for the heating and air. All of that we're in the process of fixing. They got that to me, and we found out very quickly that the set point was way too low. They were setting it at 55, and I think the other set point was like at 80. So the recovery time was just significant. So leveling that out, that's going to be okay. Here's the problem. We've got a chiller that's about to go, maybe a year left on it. When that goes, heating and air goes. And it's about a 2-year lead time on chillers is what he estimated based on his profession. So if we wait until it goes, then we wait 2 years. It may come sooner, may not, but that's what he said. The other issue is...
and he was gonna give us a quote on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're awaiting a quote.
He's gonna get us a quote on that, but we have not received it yet. What I did receive from, he talked about using that R22 refrigerant. In the emergency service building, we have 20 trained split system units that are on that R22 that possibly will need to be replaced next year. We've got, at the Hendersonville Health Department is a trained split system. We have one out there. Let's see, the Gallatin Health Department is a Carrier air-cooled chiller, but it's uses the R22 system. So it's going to have to be replaced. And the reason why is because you just can't get that anymore. EPA's phasing it out.
Yeah,
And,
they started that a while back, so it's getting more rare and more expensive year by year.
So
And then you got Westmoreland Library, just to make sure you understand, we got 3 split systems at the Westmoreland Library, at the Oldham's Bend Sheriff Department. We've got a Marvair unit and a train split system, both of them on the R22. Of course, the admin building's a chiller. So that's a lot of units that can potentially no longer have refrigerant for. And then it's just run until the refrigerant's out.
So, question, do we have, bids out for these? I mean, is there,
We only found out about this
Yeah,
early
in this
last
meeting.
week.
okay.
I mean, I've known about the R22 problem for years, but I didn't realize that we had, I'm just hearing for the first time how many units.
So
we
I
have.
guess I'm asking here, does it make sense to try to take action now in this committee? Or to do something, or?
Well, what we need to do is get the bids
Well,
on.
what we probably ought to do is get this prepped for the budget
Okay,
for next year.
okay.
I don't, nothing's out. Well, I mean, you know, a couple of them aren't working too well that could probably be replaced now, but I don't think we're at a critical point. But we do need to address it in our capital
Plus, it's the
needs.
middle of the winter and we don't.
So
have cooling,
so we're gonna move,
Best to
okay,
kill that.
got it.
Since it was carriers, it may be best to kill this and put it next year.
Well, that's what I was about to,
It's brand
I'm
new.
about to make a group and approve here to move some of this stuff to the old budget, so. So I know this is out of order, but it's gonna save some time. Is this a similar situation for the jail elevator?
I don't know anything about the jail.
We've got it out to, we're right now specking it out to bid to bring back to you.
Okay, so here's what I'd like.
It is an issue, the jail elevators.
All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion to group and approve items 1, 2, and 3, and remove these from old business, pending bringing them back up.
Sure.
Should we answer the commissioner's question before you do that on the, well, I did find it for him.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The total that we've expended to date on these projects is $291,225. The reimbursement, if we finish the projects and got it all reimbursed, is $253,509,935. So far, what we've been reimbursed by the state / FEMA is $1,050. That's what Mr. Mizzle was talking about, and the total cost is around $1,200. So, according to how you change the projects, you'll be losing somewhere around upward to $253,000 would be the cost.
David, is part of that the demolition that happened?
It's everything in there.
It's everything in
That's
there.
the county share, the local share. That's everything. The 291 is the total including everything.
Okay.
Is that
And I will go back and confirm that.
But David, that's just for the two FEMA properties, those two Highway 25 properties. That's not inclusive of the community center.
No, that's not correct.
I think
No, it's
So I know those are
not.
separate projects and they kind of get.
It says
somehow
it's
lumped together
for,
frequently, so it's like.
there's the Highway 25W, they are, let's see what they say on them. I'll get this thing shrink down.
Here's what I'd suggest. Can you email that to this group, or to all the commissioners, just so we have it on record, as opposed to just spending time
Right.
here?
And then we can go back and pull which
Yeah,
ones are
let's
included.
do
The email
that.
tells which ones are included.
And I'd like to entertain a motion again to group and approve items C1 through 3, to remove from old business, pending it being brought up for others.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Mr. Becker? All right, good. Okay, moving on, so we have 1 through 3, I understand on, item 4, entertain a motion for discussion here. All in favor? Aye. Anything here that we need to discuss? Okay.
I don't know anything
All right,
about the
got
jail.
it. You said that earlier, I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, no further discussion. Okay, moving on to C5, Forward Sumner Economic Partnership. So I'd like to entertain a motion for discussion here, and understand to lead this off, we're gonna let the Forward Sumner folks give a very brief presentation. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman Shaw, Chairman Hyde, Chairman Mansfield, members of the committee, County Mayor Isbell. I am Jimmy Johnston, Fort Sumner Economic Partnership. We are housed at the American Job Center, 5098 Greenlee in Gallatin. Fort Sumner is the business alliance, which is with the county and local governments to provide infrastructure, transportation corridor, and workforce development services for job creation. What we believe is that infrastructure, specifically roads, plus workforce services equals jobs, which means work, and we believe work is economic community development. Today before you, we have a workforce development program where we, excuse me, I sat down with Chairman Schell from the county mayor, and we've right-sized our ARPA proposal. And that proposal is now at $650,000. It's in three buckets of work, 3 projects. It's special industry training, heavy-duty equipment operator training provided by the TCAT in Portland and also the Volunteer State Community College. We're still the administrators of that. We also have a grant from TDA in that program. The second project is the paid work experiences, internships, free apprenticeships, on-the-job training. What we have there is we have it aligned, we have all the players aligned, meaning our workforce cabinet consists of the workforce system, it is the Volunteer State, President of Volunteer State Community College, President of TCAT, President of the Workforce Board, Mayor, and then we have private sector members too. By the way, I have a couple members of the Workforce Cabinet with me tonight. Kelly Crecilius is with Wilson Bank and Trust and also the United States Coast Guard. And Kevin Rutherford is the Regional Executive Vice President for GAP, which is our single largest private employer in Sumner County here in Gallatin. So back to the proposal. What we propose to do is have paid work experience, and we would phase that in over the 4 years. The first year we would do 100%, and we have cohorts. The cohorts totals would be at 500. So 50 the first year, 100 the second year, 150, 250, or excuse me, 200 the fourth year. We phase that in at 100% cost. We would cover 100% of the cost to the employer. Second year, 75%. Third year, 50%. Fourth year, 25%. We believe this is one-time money, and I have to be respectful for that. We believe as we bake this in, and we're able to tell the employers as this works, that we will, they would continue to fund this program. I think as we're talking less than $3,000 per potential employee. The way we've designed it overall is that we have 600, minimum of 600 participants, and a goal of 300 FTEs created out of this program over the 4-year program. And of course, we have till January 2024 is an opportunity to come back and reprogram, redesign, what we have done. Of course, the money has to be spent by 26, as you know. I have provided, what I provided to the Budget Committee was just basically the one-pager, and then the members of the Workforce Cabinet. I have since sent in some more detailed exhibit sheets or sheets that would go within the contract to the finance office, but that was on the last Thursday or so. But I have checked with the consultant, and we would be able to amend the current contract that we have with these budget sheets, and then it would just fall into place, and then we would just do an amendment to the contract, and we could work towards implementation. Excuse me, that's my.
Thank you, sir.
These are the ones he sent Thursday, was handed out.
Yeah, does everybody have one?
They weren't the one in the packet, they were the handed out separate,
Okay.
because they came later.
Oh. So,
I do have those as well.
I think everybody should have.
Everybody
some.
should have
Everybody
one.
should have.
They're on
one.
the table, we copied.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get in queue here and make a comment. So this was originally a $1.5 million expenditure, and I've had a few conversations with Mr. Johnson and his team. So I'm gonna go through each of these and just give my opinion on each of these projects. So project 1, to me, is a no-brainer. So this is for equipment and training, and it is I believe it's a 4-to-1 match, is that correct?
Yes, sir, right now.
So we put up $100,000 and TCAT gets, we'll end up with $500,000 total. That seems to me to have a good ROI on it. Project number 2, I think there is a fair question about whether this is a thing that you know, what should government do? But I take a look back here, and there's a real conundrum that we have in Sumner County, and that is we don't want, everybody here understands that our infrastructure is outstripping our ability to grow residential, which means that by proxy, the natural inclination of house prices is going to rise because we're going to restrict supply. So if we want people to be able to afford to live here, we've really got two choices. We either build more high-density development, which none of us want, or we grow local people's wages. So one of the big things I was hard against Facebook on was that my concern was that when they would we would build something here for them with this huge pilot program tax write-off, and then they'd bring folks from Palo Alto and not hire anybody from here, except, you know, a couple maintenance folks. What this does is it gives a streamline to some of these companies to encourage them to hire local people. Now, there's a fair question about whether that's something that the government should be doing, and I'm happy to hear anybody discussing it. But if strategically, if we want to get local people employed and to increase their wages, this feels like something that could potentially help do that. And then item number 4, project 4, we stripped down considerably just because I wanted to know what the outcomes of it were. So a good data analysis after 4 years to see how it was going to work. Let's test it and find out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and let's not waste any more time with this in the future. But if it does work, then it's useful. Project 3 and Project 5 we removed entirely. I had a lot of concerns about Project 3, and I just didn't think it was fully baked. And then Project 5, if you don't need Project 3, then you didn't need Project 5. So that's my spiel on this. I'm happy to have everybody else get in queue.
Yeah, I'd like to just share a little. I received a call back from Jim Harrison, and I had some concerns, and I told him I'm not going to hold you to these specific numbers, just give me an idea. And some of this he volunteered, that 80% of the Sumner County students go to college. And I told him I'm not going to hold you to this, but he said 40% finish. Another statistic he gave me roughly was 2,500 18 to 25-year-olds are out of school, not employed, just sitting home doing nothing. And then we both agreed, you know, not everyone's cut out for college, but there are kids that are hands-on that can work with machinery, computers, whatnot. And that enticed my interest because, you know, my kids, I've got one that's a college person, and I've got another one that's just hands-on. You give him something to work with. And I've seen quite a few kids like that. So I agree with what you're saying. I think this is a good investment. And, you know, it's done through grant money, from what I understand.
Well, this is for COVID. I mean,
COVID, yeah. So I mean, it's it's something. You know, I think. You know, I'm going to sound old. I wish there was something like this for when we graduated high school, because, you know, when me and Mr. Harrison were talking, like, when you get out of high school, there's some people like, where do I go from here? You don't want to sit in a college classroom for 3-4 hours, whatever that course is, but to have an interest in heavy machinery or mechanics, whatever that may be. So, you know, I think this is something, you know, it's a good program. I think, you know, these kids, give these kids a good leg up in life.
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Yeah. All righty. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve.
I'm just going to make a note that I abstained on this the first time because I'm employed in an industry that directly competes against this product and makes something similar or does the same thing. So I won't be voting on this in the spirit of I'm abstaining. So.
Understood.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
What is the administrative cost of this?
We've taken all administrative costs out of this, Mr. Hyde.
Everything?
Yes, sir. So Fort Sumner, obviously there's administrative cost to it, but the Fort Sumner private sector will administer this, administer this program. We had, the project 5 was project management.
Which we killed.
It is now out.
There's already 60,000 in the budget. Is this in addition to the 60 that was the grant match already there, or was it, will this?
You know, David, it was, at one point, it was 1.56.
Right.
So, because we're talking about the 1.5, which was appropriate. So if you want to add the 60 to it or subtract the 60.
Well, there's already 60 in the budget. I'm saying, is this the total, or is the 60 still out there for the?
No, this is
No,
the
no,
total.
this would be the total, so yeah.
So
This is the
it'll be
total.
minus 60 when you appropriate, because there's already 60 out there.
I was discussing with the mayor before the meeting started, but I just want to get it on record that in the 4 years after this is done, it will be fully funded by private industry.
That was the statement by Mr. Johnson, that we will not be coming to the county and expecting this to be funded.
Yeah,
I was real clear about this with everybody.
Okay.
I know.
That's one of the values of this, is building those relationships between the schools and the employers, and bridging that gap, like what Don said, bridging that gap of people that know they're not going to go to college, but still need a good skill set to be a good wage earner in Sumner County, because that's what we've got to have with median housing hitting 400,000. Our wages we have to get those wages up there to keep people in Sumner County.
And what is the success rate of this? Are there any metrics?
They're expecting 50%, so I think that's, like, they don't expect. If you see there are 500 participants, they're shooting for 250. So they're expecting, which I think is probably, I don't know that they've have a program that's similar to this, right? Because I asked that question, and I'd like to have seen that before, but it's kind of novel. You know,
How is it marketed in the high schools?
Mr. Johnson.
How is it marketed?
The work that we've done up to this point, we worked with this career and technical education pathways within the school systems. And so Sumner County Schools, as Katie can tell you, has 30 certified pathways. We looked at the 5 that we're focused on right now are construction, information technology, manufacturing, law enforcement, and health sciences. So because that's where most of their students are. Now, that also matches up with the TCAP, what they offer, and what that matches up with Volunteer State, what they offer too. So we're looking very much at those career technical pathways where there are people right now, and then attaching a work-based learning to that, and we will source the employers back to those pathways.
But the students, how do they find out about this?
Inside the schools.
Inside the schools. Through counselors?
Guidance
Yes,
counselors?
ideally. They don't have a lot of career counselors at this point, but yes, they sit on the workforce board. The CT administrator, Chase Moore, sits on the workforce cabinet, as does the director of schools, as does, I failed to mention that a minute ago when I was naming the presidents of the colleges.
Mr. Johnson, I have another question. Sorry to do.
Go ahead. No, go
And
ahead.
then I see you this way. So Mr. Mansfield actually brings a point, and I'd consider this too. The one thing that I don't like about this that feels unfair is that most of the people we partner with are larger firms, right? And so they're in some ways getting some free chicken. I'm hoping that we're partnering with smaller, local folks who are doing machining or something like that. I mean, is there any way that we can fairly kind of allocate this so that some percentage of it goes to, I know this is hard to shoot out, but I'd really like to see us, if it feels wrong, it feels unfair if you got somebody who's got a small business and they got 3 people over there and we're subsidizing somebody they're competing against and they got 100. That is the part of this that doesn't sit right with me.
You're 100% correct. The people on the workforce cabinet are just because they're members of Fort Sumner, so that's the bigger companies. But this is designed for example, special industry training, we have 40 companies signed up for that. Now, on this other here, we're still sourcing them, but we think, you track those career pathways, information technology can be a small shop. Health sciences can be it can be a doctor's office, or it can be a hospital. So, but in no means do we limit, to that list that's on there.
I would definitely like to see report on this that breaks this down by large, national, multinational versus small, local. But
I'd like to see that too.
so, okay, do you think that's something you could,
100%. The Volunteer State Community Colleges has 150 work-based learning agreements with companies.
so I'd like to, who had the motion on this? I'd like to propose that we amend this to pass it with a quarterly report that's required by Forward Sumner. I mean, we're spending $100,000 on data, so a quarterly report from Forward Sumner that breaks this down by, at a minimum, local, small, some kind of tiering from small, local, up to national, multinational. Would you entertain that amendment?
Yes.
A second? Who had the second? All right. Okay. Any other discussion on this?
I'll throw one thing.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you had a
No,
question.
thank you. It's a great discussion. I think this is a great program. It really does align well with what the feedback I've gotten from the schools and the principals I've met with, and just the principle that this is a need. It's finding businesses to partner with within the community. So, for what it's worth, I'll put it out to you guys and let you know that this is a need of the schools. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. All right, we ready to vote? All right, all in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstain, motion passes.
Are you gonna consider this flow through, or is it gonna need a second reading?
Um,
Because it didn't get unanimous?
yeah, we'll need.
If it's a flow through, it's.
We'll need
doesn't-
it, we'll need a second reading, I think, on this, because we had an abstain, and that's okay. It won't be the end of the world, we'll get a second reading. Okay, old business item D, so this is for, the election, commission, and, there's gonna be a little bit of a change here, so I'd like to make a motion, just for discussion on item, D under old business. Give it a second. Just for discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Mr. Long, I'm going to hand this one over to you for details, but generally speaking, I spoke with Ms. Ashley, and what we decided was that going back to the previous Budget Committee meeting, what we told Ms. Ashley was that we were not going to approve all of this, but that we would keep her whole for any negative balances that were to come up as a result of operations through the last election cycle. So I asked Ms. Ashley, Mrs. Ashley for that number, and she has provided to us. I think it's around $125,000 that pays for labor in arrears and benefits. Is that correct?
It pays for all the labor and arrears, benefits, and comp time accumulated.
Now, anybody, if they want to get in queue, but what I'd like to entertain a motion for is to pay for what was the amount?
125, 144, let's just say 125, 145.
$125,145 to pay for existing, pay for operations which have already occurred by the election commission. So this is what they did.
Motion.
We have a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
So, help me understand, you might not answer this question. You know, when the amendments, this Tennessee State Constitution, there were poll workers hired to try to explain that to people. I don't understand that. That's like really screwy to me because like it's not their job to influence opinion. I don't agree with that, and I got a really big problem with that.
I agree with you.
I mean, that's what this money's approving, is there's extra unneeded workers to kind of explain to somebody what an amendment is when it's not their job to do it. It's not our job to do it. It's like they can read, they research, or they don't vote, or they vote. Like, that's not, we don't hire people to influence a vote, in my opinion. I heard that happen and I couldn't believe it. I mean, that, I, 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 You see where my point is.
I know, I get the
So
concern.
What's the,
what's the oversight
So, I mean,
position?
I would.
I would never have approved that expenditure, or for that, or flatly rejected that.
This may be.
So where are we at?
I feel like this is a question of what our lane is. You know, can we, and maybe this, Mr. Allen, this is a question for you, you know, do we have the authority to deny funds for something that we believe is questionable, or what would be the path to do that?
Well, because these are salaries and benefits for people who already worked, even if we wouldn't have hired them for them, you have to pay people for the hours worked.
Yeah. I feel like for the purposes of budget committee, I think it would be difficult to justify not paying somebody somewhere along the line said, come and work and do this. And we may not agree with that, but it's difficult to not pay somebody in arrears.
Can I ask a question?
We had one, but go ahead.
I'm just astounded that anybody could come up with a budget and miss it this badly. That's amazing to me.
We got one in queue, Mr. Becker, but go ahead.
I was just gonna answer his question.
My question to the chair would be, how do we make them accountable for being more than 30, 40, 50% off?
Yeah, I mean, so.
You mean on the 279 they requested versus the 125?
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot, Mr. Long. I mean, so I think this is done during the budgeting process, right? I mean, we're inheriting this.
I realize.
So I'm answering the question, but we got a couple in queue. The way I'm viewing this is that we're inheriting this and we're trying to like work our way through it, but during the next budgeting cycle and during the next election cycle, clearly, I've already worked with Mr. Long. I wanted to move this out. He's done some benchmarking. So I want to kind of keep these things separate, paying the people who've already worked, and let's keep that discussion separate from how do we make this not happen again, which we have had some discussion on, and you are bringing some data to the table. I just wanted to keep them separate,
Okay.
so that we do just the
Fair
one at a
enough.
time. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
Mr. Mansfield?
And Mr. Becker?
You were first and then Mr.
That's
Becker.
fine. Correct me if I'm wrong, question for our finance director. Comparatively, where Sumner County is on spending money on elections compared to other counties, in my understanding, we're like in the top tier most, is that right? Or I can't remember what,
If you
a little
add
bit
the-
back and forth last month.
If you add the 279,000 she originally requested, it makes her request more than Rutherford County.
Which is almost double the size of Sumner County.
Significantly larger.
Okay.
They are,
We're going to address this.
Okay, so we just need to take care of obligations tonight.
That's right. That's Mr. Becker. Were you?
I'm done.
Good. Any other discussion here?
they're 352,182 compared to 200,557. Almost double.
Any other discussion on the motion on the table, which is just to keep her whole with this, keep the organization whole for hours worked? No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passed unanimously.
Did you oppose?
Okay, we're to item, old business E. I'm gonna entertain a motion. I'm gonna go ahead and, entertain a motion here to, pass, I talked approximately, what, 28,000?
25,000.
25,000, in funds for the EMS, department, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this just for the purpose of discussion. I'll go ahead and put it on the table. Okay, so I'm gonna open this up real quick, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox real quick, and then I'll get off of it, because I know we're late. This should have never happened. We should have never put one-time funds towards salary. And I know that this was bonuses. I know there are a lot of good reasons why we said we wanted to do it. It should have never happened. If we needed to keep people for retention, then we should have made that argument that we needed additional funds from a recurring source. Because now we're in a real pickle. We're in a real pickle. And we're gonna have we're gonna have a couple really tight discussions here with several folks over the course of the next 2 years in order to catch up on these funds, because basically, we're operating on revenues of X plus Y for 30 months, and in order to keep people paid at their existing salary, we're gonna have to make up Y in recurring funds that are very tight in a constrained budget. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I won't say anything more about it because we are where we are. And I will support this motion for this particular amount of funding because for 2 reasons. One, my understanding is that the individuals did not know about they didn't realize that this funding difference was supposed to be 15 to 12. It was they were basically let me try to make this more simple. We have folks right now who are riding along. One individual lieutenant is riding right alongside another medic.
Just a paramedic, yeah.
And they're doing the same job, and one's getting a lot less.
Right.
So that's item 1 for fairness. Even though this was, again, not supposed to be done this way, and we're in a bad situation because of it, but we want to do the right thing for the individuals. The second is it's a moot point, because the majority of these individuals who are fall under this are going to hit this $25,000 cap that you mentioned at the very beginning of our meeting.
If we don't start downing the amount. Yes.
So it's a moot point anyway. We were going to spend this money anyway. It's just a matter of timing. So for that's my thoughts here. I'm happy to have anybody else get in queue.
And what happened was the individuals had job classifications, but they were also paramedics, so there was some confusion. They got paid as a paramedic versus their classification. That's how we got here. Or you may be a lieutenant, but you're also a paramedic, so they got paid the 12% as a paramedic versus the 0% as a lieutenant when they were interpreting the data. Now the 125, it was caught, and then now we're dealing with it. It affected. We have 7 listed here, but it actually affects 8. I found an 8th one.
Okay.
So we need to handle. It's not on here, but it's not a significant amount to handle all 8 employees.
All right. Any other discussion? Inspector.
How did this get identified?
Payroll found it, and then we called them, and they went through and found some additional, and we found the rest of them. So basically, they identify as a paramedic. We're going into the new payroll system where we're entering the stuff and comparing it. We notice the difference. We have looked at the ARPA funds. The ARPA funds, there's plenty of appropriations here to cover this. The reason it's brought back to you is because the original schedule put in the budget says this, and when it says something different, I'm going to disclose it and send it to a committee that's technically it's in the budget and could have just flowed along, but I'm just making sure everybody's.
So it sounds like a training issue really more than anything as far as
Well,
how they were.
If you look at how they're identified on the sheet, in other words, somebody was called a lieutenant, but they're also a paramedic.
No, I get
And there
that.
was a lot of discussion back and forth what a paramedic was gonna get, and then the final words go around, they thought
So
paramedics
we
got
just
all
paid
work.
them a higher rate. most
Right,
of the time.
about anywhere from 2 to 12%.
Got it.
And there is plenty of money appropriated, will not require an appropriation of any type.
And that's like 12% increase on their salary?
What happened was,
I want
everybody
some of that.
except for the chief was paid 15% last year. When you got the raises this year, but based on the salary survey, based on classifications, whatever your classification went up was minused off of your ARPA, to the point where you would just receive a 1% raise. So if you were 15 and you went to 0, you received a raise somewhere above 15%. So the lieutenants, because when they were on the salary survey, were shown to be paid lower than average, actually received a larger raise. And another clarification, the ARPA funds or these amounts were never counted toward their calculations for the salary survey, so it wasn't held against them either. That's why it was.
So I think what I'm getting at is whenever we put together the budget for this next year, that these 7 or 8 employees' salaries be specifically analyzed and made sure that they're not getting the same amount of raises as their.
That's exactly right. We're gonna have to burn this in over the course of the next 2
that's
years.
my-
It's gonna be this cascading kind of burn in, and
Yeah.
that was my diatribe earlier.
I got it.
That's
What the
exactly it.
All
What
right.
the original discussion was, do you back off the ARPA against the
Yep.
cost of living each year? That's why if we don't continue that, you're gonna have the $25,000 issue And then in 2024, you're gonna have a really large issue.
Okay. All right.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Have these employees had this discussion?
Mr. Miller, have these employees had this discussion?
Well, the discussion's been had that the previous commission was trying to burn this off, so they're just kind of in limbo waiting to see what the current commission is going to try to do with this.
But do they know that their percentages are not in sync with what they should have been?
These 7, I think he's talking about.
These 7.
Or 8, actually. We'll give you the 8 that we found.
Okay.
Any further discussion here? Okay. All in favor to approve these funds for these 8 employees? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, this is, so moving for education here, this is, we can't rely on Mr. Brown for an update here.
Mr. Commissioner Rogers is vice chairman is here.
Okay.
I'll be happy to give an update.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put a motion to the board. I think you might have, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if we can suspend the rules for him to talk or.
Yeah, we can suspend the rules.
Okay,
Let's just,
So I'm just,
take a motion to suspend the
I move to
rules.
suspend the rules, allow Commissioner Rogers to.
All right, all in favor?
speak about it.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Rogers.
all right. So I've learned a lot since last committee meeting. There's so much going on in this county, I can't keep up over 4 years of trying to research what I thought I was researching. We basically have, Katie's here, and thankfully, from what I've discovered, we have about 4 grant projects. We have a Century, well, not grant projects, let me just put it under that umbrella. But we've got like a daycare option, we've got a LEAPS option, we've got a 21st Century option, and we've got just the YMCA option, and it's different based on the schools and based on what the kids are involved in. Me, just an old country boy, I thought that was, if you have 9 of these schools in a LEAP grant, then those 9 schools need to follow the same guidelines. And I've even reached out to the state, and I've got personal emails prior to me becoming a county commissioner, where I've reached out to the state looking for those answers. It's crazy, the stuff that they go off into. It's nuts, they can have it. It's probably worse than what we're diving off into. But I will say that I don't have a problem with what our school system's doing in regards to these funds, since I've been educated. But there's, the confusion for me was, and I think I said it when we passed this on through, there's 4 different grant bodies, if you will, out there, 4 different funding bodies through the county. And when you start tracking those, it gets crazy. Because an elementary school that's right next door to another middle school, the elementary school can have its daycare program, but the middle school could be on the LEAPS funding program, which is nuts to me. But some of the concerns that I do have actually comes from the state level. It's nothing that they're doing at the county. It comes from the state level. So therefore, I will take my dealings up with William Lambert at the state level with that. So that's where I am as a commissioner. I understand what you're doing. I appreciate you taking the time to explain the last committee meeting. I've went by and dove further into the junk that I have, and through talking to other people, I've come to understand it better. So that's why this is here before you. I personally don't have any problems with it. It makes sense. It seems like it's a lot of money to carry over, but again, it's at the state level. It's not at the county levels where I have the question. So.
Thank you, sir.
Make a motion to approve.
All righty, any discussion?
I have questions if we can allow.
Yeah, we can, just so you can answer a couple of these questions.
I was just trying to understand the discussion. I know that this is the LEAP, what we're approving is the, I know they weren't calling it a surplus, but I am, I guess. And is it, were ESSER funds used for the LEAP program, and then are we using LEAP money to expand the LEAP program, and ESSER money will run out, and therefore we're gonna run out of LEAP money program, is that correct? Or is that
You going to Kate?
I'll take it.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
So the ESSER funds required us, the state sent some that required us to have summer programming.
Okay.
And the LEAPS program typically would fund summer programming. And so that took the place of that. Students weren't attending both programs. We couldn't have them both in the same buildings. And so that ESSER funds minimized what we could do with the LEAP programming in the summer. And we did have, so this goes back 2 years when the schools closed early and we lost that whole quarter of after-school programming plus the summertime, just when the world was closed for a while. Then come the next year, the funding from the ESSER program paid for the summertime during that. And so we had some extra funds due to that quarter being closed and then due to an influx of ESSER funds. And so these funds, this grant cycle for these funds ends June 30th. And so all of these funds will be expended by June 30th. And the ESSER funds are not being used directly for these programs. It just was sort of during the summertime, it would have been a duplicate program at that time. So we will still continue to have our summer programming.
I think you see where I'm going with this question, going back to your soapbox. I don't want us funding anything that's a permanent recurring program or salaries with ESSER funds or these COVID funds, because the comptroller one says don't do it. It's about, and because we're going to get in trouble like we've gotten here that they did poorly. I'm just making sure that there's been some confusion, that I want to make sure that if the LEAP grants are going towards something and ESSER funds, even though I understand what I think you understand what you're saying about the summer program, that these LEAPs grant aren't expanding the program, and then we're still depending on ESSER funds. They're going to dry up in 2 years or not be used, because, I mean, I'll say dry up relatively, because you get 2024 to do what you want to with the $49 million. But I just want to make sure that we're not expanding programs using one-time COVID funds that are recurring costs. I can't support that. So I got to make sure that I got to know what I'm voting for.
Sure, I understand that completely. No, the LEAPS program, the Unity programs, which is our brand name essentially for this funding, is a total separate program from
Straight state grant, right?
Yes, LEAPS is straight state grant. It's unclaimed lottery funds, if you will, like people that didn't go cash in their tickets.
Okay.
And so that pot of money is divvied up among schools or among districts that apply for it. And schools that meet the qualifications for that funding are eligible for the program. And we have it at 6 middle schools. It has not changed for the ESSER. The only way that ESSER has affected it, it's been the summer, is that summer.
But that's not expanding the program, using those funds and then using these LEAP funds to expand the program, and the ESSER funds are getting pulled back, and therefore we've got a gap, and they can, and it's like, oh gosh, we're not funding schools.
No, this after school program runs in isolate, like this pocket is my pocket, I'm not playing with the ESSER funds, it runs in isolation of itself. Its own program, we don't overlap, there's no ESSER funds coming to these programs.
That's where I got confused, is because I had a kid that was in elementary school, and then I had a complaint that was coming from a middle school. We all know what happens when you assume stuff. So without going far enough into the 4 pockets of silos that's out in the county, that operates, again, school to school, I was under the assumption that if this one is a LEAP school, then this one should be a LEAP school, and how are they buying playground equipment for this LEAP school? And it's not how it worked. So I was able to back up, and I'm saying now, I satisfied my ignorance, maybe, it's debatable, but to understand that there's these at least 4 schools, systems that run out there that's in the county. Now, I can argue that I think there's some other ESSER funds funding salaries in other parts of the county, but not through the LEAP program. I think we would be safe to vote for this funding going through the LEAP program. Then I don't think it's tied to any ESSer funds that we would be concerned with to have to fund as a reoccurring position later on.
That's where I'm coming from.
And that's what I've.
I get it.
Yeah, I don't think that's this case at all. I don't think we would be adding staff, benefits, cell phone coverage, and all of that stuff this time next year. If we are, I'll go ahead and say it now, if we are, it's my total ignorance, because I can't see it. Now, some question of ESSER funds being used in other places, yeah, I've got a question of that. But as far as the LEAPS program goes, no, I can't see that.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. Ma'am. All right, motion on the table is to approve this. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okie dokie. Great. Okay, item G, I'll entertain a motion to approve these funds, but I think there's gonna be some discussion here.
On G's the one that's still under review.
Oh, that's right, sorry about that.
Oh.
Yeah, we can,
I'm gonna make a motion,
yeah, go for it.
table this, because that's what I tried to do last time, you taught me how to do it, that's my motion.
All right.
Second that.
Any discussion to table this?
Which one are we talking, G?
G. Page 64.
What is table until what?
I'm just, the true Robert's Rules version of table, I'm postponing it definitely.
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely. Sorry.
Indefinitely, it's
I got
late.
3 hours sleep last night, I'm like.
So move it from the agenda, then, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Postponing indefinitely. It's my motion.
Yeah, and there's a second.
What would that impact?
I think it's just they keep doing the things the same way they're doing it, it just doesn't cost us any more money.
Yeah, I mean, I assume if something's gonna break, I mean, you can make the argument that it'll come up in the next budget cycle.
Yeah, this is the planning.
Yeah, this is just to make it easier for
Yeah.
developers to.
I didn't
make money.
sense
Yeah.
that Josh was in love with the
Yeah,
stuff
so
to begin
It's
with.
just so they can come down, it's not a pain to come down here, write a check versus
Yeah.
doing some online.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Oh.
Yeah, that's what that was.
it was
All right, any discussion on this?
It was about 10,000.
All right, all in favor of tabling this item, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? What's that? Mr. Schmidt. Okay. Got another thing off of this guy.
Yes, that's where we go.
Okay, item H, Mr. Loing, or actually, I'll go ahead and make a motion here for discussion on item.
So moved.
These are the bond proceeds for the construction of the, over the Resources Authority of the transfer station. When we were calculating the carryovers last year, this PO was minus off the carryover amount that should not have been because it was paid this fiscal year. So we carried over $165,159, $10 too little in the budget for that bond proceeds. The proceeds are sitting with the county and have to be spent on this.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion here? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to new business, good deal. The first one's information only, Mr. Long.
Yeah, this is the information only from the schools, and it's been through the budget committee.
Yeah.
Or the,
We don't need to take
education
any,
No, the education committee, I'm assuming, seen it on.
so, no need to vote here. Any discussion on this? All right, drug court. I'll entertain a motion here to pass this, item B1.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Long?
Every year we budget this particular employee to be paid out of, in other words, the drug court has fees that pay their cost. And we budget this employee every year out of the fees because we don't know if we've received this grant. So if we've received the grant, we actually use the grant to pay the employee's salary instead, and that way we can keep the fees for the drug court to keep it running. This is an existing employee. They've been here I've been here 14 years. They were here when I got here, so it's not a new position. And it's the way it's been done every year.
All right, we have a motion. I don't know whether we have actually a second.
I second.
Oh, you got a second? All right, any discussion on this? All right, all in favor of approving? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to group and approve both 2A and 2B.
It was a C pass, I should have changed it.
Motion.
It still gives you
All righty.
guys a training.
2A, 2B.
2A and 2B for the sheriff's office, and I'll go ahead and get in queue and make some notes here. Officer Craddock and I have spoken on this. So the first one is this is a $25,000 insurance recovery. So there was a canine vehicle that was totaled. This is money that was recovered out of the insurance claim, and he's just asking for that money to rebuild a new canine vehicle. So it's net. The second one is this is funding that comes. I believe actually it's federal pass-through money that we get whenever an illegal alien is picked up in the state of Tennessee and transferred to federal custody. And so there's some money that the county gets for that. And so what he's asking for here, which I think is a good ask, is to utilize almost $18,000 for upgrades to the Wi-Fi system in the jail. So, any discussion on this? All right, all in favor of grouping and approving both A and B? Aye. Any opposed? All righty. Item 3, the highway funding request.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second for that? Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna move to amend that by referring it back to Highway. Highway Chairman requested that we send that back to Highway. He wasn't aware of this, so.
I'll second that. Go ahead, because there's Highway Chair.
I would like for us to have the opportunity to discuss it when it's appropriate about highway before the citizens who would come for that line item. So that's the main.
So that's his motion to amend this, to amend yours to send this back to Highway, because it never made it through Highway. It never made it through Highway. It was brought directly here. Do you want to retract your motion, or do you want to go ahead and vote on it?
Did I say something?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'm Sumner County Roadway Superintendent, I'm Toby Ellis. Our office is at 1051 Old 109 North. In no way was I trying to overstep the highway committee or my chairman or my committee in any form or fashion. It was, I think I've talked to most of the commissioners in the past 3 months, and I think everybody understands the position I'm in with what's going on with the highway department. We've, back in the mid-90s, Scotty Parker was doing close to 100,000 tons a year. Fast forward to this year, we're going to be short of 40,000. So we've had diminishing returns year over year based on cost and inflation. So what's happening is if we keep interjecting the same monies that we have, right now we're just getting further and further behind year over year. So if I keep doing the same kind of dollar amount and we raise that dollar amount to match the inflation, we're still getting further behind. So I was aware of maybe an opportunity to inject some extra money into the capital to do more mix. Right now, when I come into office, there was over 2 miles of roadway that was already milled out. I had to pave it. What I'm kind of proposing here, whether it goes to the commission or goes to the budget, I was advised to come to the budget from the standpoint, y'all dictate the dollars that flow through the county. If there's extra money, I would love to interject it into our roadway account, just in the mix. It's bid. Right now, I've got a cost of $125,000 a mile. 2 years ago, it was $80,000. Right now, bituminous index has dropped down about $3 or $4 a ton. So right now, I'm getting a much better deal. So what I would like to do is going into the next month or two, I think I'll still get some weather to where I can get some roads paved and early spring really come out of the gate and get a lot of roads done. Right now, we've got probably, if I'm doing 125,000 a mile, I could easily say we've got a $200 million asset in county roadways with maintaining 800 miles of roadway. Right now, we're paying about, our maintenance cost is about less than 1.5% is what we're spending to try to keep up the roads. And simple math, I'm pretty sure most of you agree with me, that's nowhere near enough money. So whether it goes back to our committee on the highway or it goes through y'all, I need extra money and extra funding to, I feel like, do what I do best. And that's to serve the county and pave the roads and try to make it a safer roadway system for all of our counties.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kitchener, did you have another note?
Thank you, guys. David Easter, 1023 Oak Ridge, Hendersonville, Tennessee, 3705. I just want to say one thing. So, and Toby, I appreciate what you're saying. Appreciate this is the budget committee. But there's a couple things that just need to be said. I didn't think it needed to be before, but I think optics-wise, Toby canceled the Highway Commission meeting because there was not a need for anything on the agenda. But how much money is on that line item, those 2 line items?
There isn't any, I don't think there's a, hold on a minute. I would say it was around 300,000. So
1,125 and 380.
We said again.
388. 388. Or 380.
380 and
Yeah.
1,125,000.
Only extra.
380,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 385.
It feels like that's agenda item. And so I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not trying to split hairs. I care about you. I just care about the citizens' money more. And that's the reason why I just want to pull it back.
That's fair.
I don't think we're ever on fire, especially roads. I grew up on a gravel road, so I'm the wrong person for thinking about spending or not spending. So I just want you to know that. Very important to me to be careful. So that's public transparency. That's why I didn't want to do it.
Since it's sent back to highway and
It's not sent back.
It's not, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. What does the highway committee need to consider on this? If they would approve it, is that?
Yeah, Mr.
If
Teacher.
they would approve roads getting paid?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Okay, so.
for the injection.
More transparency. We've yet to see any budget from a road superintendent. And we've been meeting since the commission came into being. We've seen a couple of things like how much it would cost to buy flashing lights, but that's all we've seen. And so we don't know how much money that we spend on a daily basis or what it's for or we haven't had any of that analysis time. And that's the due diligence that I'm expected to do as chairman of the Highway Commission. And so I think the most important thing is that we don't have any, we don't know if we're getting any quotes. We don't know how much mix we're using. We don't know how much that we have money left or how much we spent, where we are. And I was told of Mr. Ellis that there were a lot of documents destroyed when he came into office. And so I think that there's a lot of things that we need to know because that seems wrong and strange to me. And so I want to see that before I vote on anything, and pass it on to y'all to vote so that you'll have all the information I can give you because I got the most I can get from you.
That's totally fair. And I just want to make one comment here because if there's any blame to be had, blame me, because we had, Mr. Ellis and I, when we first met, talked about, he had mentioned some of these shortfalls and what was coming, and I had mentioned, well, we'll try to look for ways to flush you up. I mean, there weren't any kind of specifics discussed, but I just want to be clear, blame me. I mean, this is my fault.
I understand. I don't think it's anybody's blaming. In fairness, Toby's done an amazing job because he's trying to fight to get roads paid. And I'm trying to fight to not spend taxpayer money. So I think this is where the two roads collide, no pun intended, roads. But I really believe that we have to make sure that we do our due diligence because I cannot, in good faith, spend $1 of taxpayer money on roads that I haven't seen the reasoning behind.
That's fair. Ms.
No
Becker?
hard feelings at all.
So your motion is the first one on the table?
Yeah. So we need to vote on that. But,
Well, I moved to amend it.
your
Well, I guess
amendment's not changing. You have a completely different.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally, we can just.
You can vote
we just
mine down, obviously,
Yeah.
if you want to, but, okay. Understanding the context a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm thinking as I'm talking. What is I'm trying to read up. Can someone clarify what this money's been spent for then?
he's asking for $380,000 for 3 tractors with the mount 5-inch mowing decks, and then he's asking for $1,125,000 for asphalt.
And is that an immediate thing, or is there a bidding process for that, or is that just something?
The asphalt is pretty immediate, and it's something it's bid out. We've got a price, a yearly annual price on that. It's something that, if y'all did something and approved it, it's just gonna continue on, and I'm just gonna keep paving and get 10 more miles.
Is there any material difference between doing this now and next month?
No.
Okay.
But it's just something that, you know, go through the business, I'm gonna get it. People know the urgency, I have to get it done.
Got it. Okay. I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Mr. Mansfield?
I move to amend, I move to refer back to highway for the highway chairman's request.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, we have one no. All righty, we're back to libraries here on transfers. So I'd entertain a motion here to send this budget request back to the library board.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Becker?
I'm not opposed to that at all, but I would like to understand a little bit better what the gentleman said about the urgency of this request.
So, in the past,
Can you come up here just in case maybe the video can pick up here? And go ahead and restate your name and address, please.
Sure, my name is Alan Morales, I live at 166 Woodlake Drive in Gallatin. So in the past, each library came to the library board and got a budget approved for each separate library. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ron, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
At one point.
In this last year, they formalized a system, so each library still had their own budget. I have a budget, Millersville has a budget, Gallatin, so forth. There's also a system account, because some costs came out of that. That was done in order to save some money. Like, for example, this last summer, instead of individually each library purchasing things for the summer reading program, which is one of our biggest expenses, most of those costs were incurred through the system because we pooled our resources together to get better deals and buy in bulk. Right? We kept money in there for things like the executive director, who recently resigned, and for other systems costs, right? So that we could allocate money where it was needed and not spend it frivolously. Since we were kind of informed that the commission was opposed to there being a system account and the director stepped down, we were trying to dissolve the system and put the money back into libraries, which I heard was the biggest complaint about what was currently being done. So that money came before the library board, that budget. All the money was allocated towards those budgets. It came before the commission was approved. But since the amount is so big, it has to be moved back. So for example, and I don't remember the line item account verbatim, but data processing is one of the account lines in my budget. It has $0 allotted to that because the system normally took care of that cost. So, and we would normally use that to purchase things like ink. Now, I purchased 2 different types of inks for our library. I purchased ink for the bigger machines, which the public uses, and then we also have a couple of smaller printers that we have like in cataloging or a couple places that we don't do a lot of printing with those. And that ink is purchased through like Staples or Amazon. That is the line item that has 0. We recently purchased ink because I knew that I had budget transfers coming through and I didn't think it was going to be an issue for us to put money into that. And so when that hits soon, there'll be no money in that, right? Now, I guess what I could go back is tomorrow figure out what money I can move from an existing account that I have that has money in that line item to cover the cost of like ink. Mileage, we pay employees when they use their own personal vehicle to do library business. For example, one of my employees twice a week goes to the bank. It's only like 2 miles or something like that. But we add it up after the month, and I think it's like 13 miles. She turns it in and we give her money. That line item account was covered by the system before. My account line item doesn't have enough money to cover that. We'll figure that out, I guess. But all that money was being shifted around so that we could cover the operating costs. So there's 2 different things on that, on those 5 pages. One is personnel costs. We were trying to move the rest of the executive director's salary back to the libraries. And we were also reallocating the bookkeeper salary to Gallatin, so that it comes out of that library.
And then the other part was the operational cost, like data processing or contracts. I've had to pay more than normal on things like elevator repairs. We've just had a bad luck with our elevator recently. So we've had extra maintenance costs, so they've come out of that. So some of that money was going to cover some existing expenditures that went over than what we had planned, right? We weren't planning on things breaking down. And some of it was to cover things that had a zero line item in it.
So is it fair to say this request is to decentralize the budget, basically from a?
Yes, sir.
Take all the central
Yes.
funds and disperse it
Yes.
accordingly?
We were gonna just leave a little bit in case we didn't budget correctly, right? And then we could always deal with a little bit left over at a later date. But it was basically to try to reallocate the money back to the libraries, what we had heard that the commission wanted in the first place.
The issue I just think is one of procedure, right?
Yeah.
Like that it didn't go back to the library, the new library board first.
Yeah.
It, ma'am.
But that was never a procedure in the past. So I think it wasn't done with any malice or intent, right? That would have.
No, nobody's, there's none of that. It's just it's just one procedure here, and we're just trying to, because I want you to speak, ma'am, but let me ask a question. Will you be able to operate in the interim? Like, is the library gonna need to shut down if we don't do this?
We won't need to shut down, but we won't be able to pay some bills, like the ink thing. So I'll have to figure out how to move money around to cover some expenses. And I can't speak for all 5 libraries where they might have a zero balance or not enough in a certain line item.
He's talking about the way it's set right now, the policy.
I get it.
I'm approved to move between line items, but not locations. There's actually a county commission policy for that.
Ma'am.
And I'm Diane again, and I support the libraries, don't misunderstand that at all. I just think that the library board needs to review this first. What I would ask is that nothing get moved right now. For Alan, if he needs to buy ink, it was originally coming out of the system line item that originally had $207,000 plus in it. And so I'm just asking David in the budget committee, if you will please allow this system to stay as it is until the board can make some decisions. When Alan needs to buy ink and he gets the invoice for the ink, it was originally coming out of the system budget. So why can't, for another month or so, why can't that continue? Because if the executive director hadn't resigned in November, we probably wouldn't be here discussing this at this particular moment. So all I'm asking, so that the libraries can continue to be supported for those items that need to happen that were originally transferred. Like Alan said, I looked it up when I was sitting here. He has no money. It was taken from him. Hendersonville, for example, lost from last fiscal year to this fiscal year, they lost almost $120,000. When this system was created, and some of you were there, the county was not going to give the libraries any more money to operate. So the only way that an executive director and 2 full-time people could be hired was to take money from the libraries. And we don't need to rehash that, but all I'm saying is, can we just leave the system budget as it is and pay those
So
invoices?
what I'm understanding here is that the bills are gonna get paid using the existing system until the library has a chance to review the budget request and then send it us.
Right, and then those libraries that lost money, we need to get it back.
Some bills will
to
be
them.
paid.
One question. Who do you want to authorize the expenditures from the system since, do you want that to come back from the board chair?
It can just come back from the board.
From the board chair?
That's fine.
The board chair authorizes expenditures
That's
for
fine.
system and just leave everything
Okay,
on.
so make an amendment
You can
to
just
your
add the
motion
board chair.
that we would have the board chair authorize any expenditures under the existing system.
I agree. Second.
And then when the library board gets a chance to review all this, audit the different budgets, make a decision on what we're gonna do about the system, whether or not it's
Got
gonna
it.
stay,
Understood.
then we'll get back to you.
Understood.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So if the chair is gonna approve it, do each of us go to the chair, or do we wait till like the next meeting in January?
That's between you guys and the board.
If we're expanding it, through that line item, when we get a bill, they just need to get an email from the board chair.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll go ahead and pay it.
We'll just go ahead and pay it until.
Just like we were in the past, like we're still system.
Yep.
So
It's
Susan,
just
that's been
continue
paying
as,
the bills,
continue
so
as
they're-
previous,
to charge
until it gets, until the new
system.
budget gets
We're
approved.
technically still system-wide at this point.
That's right.
Just for logistical purposes, when does the library board meet again? When is your next?
January the 11th.
January the 11th.
Okay.
And I don't know that the board chair is aware of any of this.
Will we meet before then or after?
It'll be after, so that should work. Now, we should meet out.
We'll meet tonight.
We're gonna meet the 9th. So we'll be
So
somewhere.
all right, so we meet before.
I was thinking
So-
full commission.
The full commission is the
It's gonna be the
23rd.
23rd. Full commission will be the 23rd, the fourth Monday, but, I mean, we're, second Monday's the 9th.
That's true, but I mean,
It doesn't change our meeting time.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So we're before then.
yeah,
That's what I was trying,
Yep.
that's why I asked the question.
so it means that, well, I mean, we
And
could,
It would go another month.
it would go another month, but that's not the end of the world. Nothing's
I-
gonna, nothing's gonna
I
shut
just want-
down
I just
here.
want them to understand kind of how
Yeah,
this is.
so it'd be two months.
Right.
And it'd be February when this gets handled.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll give us time to meet as a board,
Okay.
to work through the audit issues that need to be done, and to make recommendations of what needs to get transferred down to the library from where
All right.
it's taken.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any in the negative? Motion passed unanimously. Okay, I'd like to move to group and approve items C2, A, and B. I'd entertain a motion here. To group and approve C2, A, and B. Anybody want to do that? Okay.
Item A, I've got some questions.
So, well, then we'll do them each individually. I'll entertain a motion there to group, or just to do item 2A, County Commission 3,000, County Commissioner
May I
travel.
be recognized? Well, I guess we need to
Yeah,
get a motion on the
table.
floor for.
Motion for discussion.
Just A, for just A, for approval.
He moves, I second.
All right.
There has traditionally been money in the budget, a limited amount of money for training of county commissioners, because there are many valuable sessions by CTAS and other groups to train commissioners on various facets, from highways to whatever. Our wonderful previous commission cut that out. It was only $10,000. It's been there for years, but we were left without anything. I had a commissioner to approach me about attending what she thought was a very valuable CTAS meeting, and wanted travel money to go to the meeting, and we found out there was zero amount of money in there. So we don't want even what we've traditionally had in there, but we'd like to have for the rest of the year, so this person can go to this training, and anyone else that finds a CTAS course or something that would be valuable to your chairmanship or whatever, to be able to go. So this is to assist, I think it was Miss Boyd in this case, but anyone else that finds something they need to attend. It's something that's happened for years that was cut out before we came in.
Mr. Wayne, you had a question, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, the CTAS training, from what I've noticed, there's a lot of online options available for a lot of these courses. So I kind of saw this, when I saw it, I was like, I don't know about that. So I had some reservation concern about that. And then with that small amount, when you got 24 people, usually we want to go and travel and do some kind of learning. And is it just a first come, first serve, or is there need to be a cap set per commissioner, whereas if you want to go, maybe the county, if you guys so choose, helps to a certain extent, so it doesn't pay the full ride, you know?
I think we could look at that very well, and that's a good thought in the future. But right now, we're with this particular problem, and that is something to look at. And we're not asking for the full $10,000. As long as they were in office, they had $10,000 a year plus to go to these sessions and so forth. We're only asking for 3 for this time to take care of this situation.
So I guess my question still is there an online option for this particular course?
There's an online option, but some people don't get as much out of online options. I would not, as being there personally, being able to talk with people directly and fellow commissioners from other counties.
And we're calling this travel, it may need to be eventually moved to tuition or travel, because a lot of times what we call travel also includes the cost of online classes. So that may be what you're asking. Some of the classes have a charge, so that would include it too, not just driving down there.
Mr. Schmidt?
I have all the respect in the world for you, Mr. Hyde, but I'm gonna respectfully disagree, and I'm gonna vote no on this because it's my opinion. I'm not speaking for every commissioner here, so don't hate me for this. When I pulled papers to run in February, I didn't know if we even got a dime. I was told you get a $500 a month stipend. Here's how I feel about the stipend. If you and I decide to go visit, or whatever commissioners decide to visit a facility like the health department, that's my dime. That's not the taxpayer's dime. I got all the respect in the world for you, Mr. Hyde, but I'm going to vote no on this out of principle because it's nickel and diming the taxpayers, and I'm not going to do it. And if someone wants to cut me a check for this, I'll return it to the county, and if they refuse it, I'll donate it to a charity such as homeless or someone that needs food before I'll cash this and put it in my bank account. I'm going to vote no on this.
Is this a request to put something back in a line item under the commission for this, or is this something that's already been spent? We're trying to cover spent money.
This has not been spent. This is a request.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Any further discussion? No, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
I'm curious what training this is for, and if it would be valuable training for multiple commissioners versus just the single one.
Well, I'm sure it would be open to other commissioners. And I'm not personally involved in this at all. It's strictly one commissioner's request. I'm not sure. Do you remember, David, what training it was that she had requested?
I think she mentioned it, some kind of grant classes about to discuss some of the grants that are available.
Grants available.
I would posit that this is a discussion for the next budget cycle. And the question should be, as opposed to doing a one-off, do we want to allocate a certain amount, I don't know, maybe that's 10,000, maybe that's 15,000, that goes into this, which can be utilized, and have that discussion then, as opposed to just, that's my thought on this.
I mean, again, I'm not, no disrespect to you, I think this thing needs to be.
Do we have a motion in a second?
We have a motion to discuss. So I'll entertain a motion to, a motion to deny, whatever. Make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think there should be any such fund for county commissioners to travel, period.
So you just made a motion to no? You going to second?
I'll second it, yeah.
This particular request was for tuition, the possibility of tuition, not the actual travel.
But again, I mean, when you pull papers to run for office, I don't know how much more clearer it can get. $500 a month is what the taxpayers are paying each and every one of these commissioners. We should not be charging them another dime above it. I'm sorry.
Mr. Teacher.
I gotta say, I really do respect you, Mr. Hyde, but I actually agree with Commissioner Wynn and Commissioner.
Well, he said about the online training, he brought it up, which is a very good point.
Well,
I would be cautious just because of just any kind of money.
But Jamie, let me say, I'm not, as I say, this is not a personal issue of mine. I'd be more aggressive about it if it was. I'm bringing it for Ms. Boyd, who wanted to take a CTAS training, and it was cut out, I think, intentionally so that we would have no opportunity for training before we got here. But if we, I probably am more conservative than Don, and we know Don is pretty conservative. But in any event, Don, I'm glad you went down this road. We have every department in this building with a travel expense. So let's just cut all travel out.
Let's do it.
Well,
I'll back you up.
Here's training. Mr. Hyde, I've gotten a lot of training from Mr. Hyde, just listening to him. and he often says this, I don't think any minds are gonna be changed by any further discussion on this. So I'm gonna call, I can't call a question. 'Cause it's my
You got a motion, he got a second.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's call a vote. Motion is to deny this. So a yes would be to deny this. All in favor of denying, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Mr.
opposed?
Chairman, would you call Ms. Boyd?
I will. I will. I'll tell her. I'll let Donna tell her.
I have no problem with that.
Listen,
I'll tell
no, it's my chair, I'll do it. All right, moving on to general sessions. Vacation payout of a terminated employee.
Motion approved.
Just gonna get a second? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve this. Aye. Okay, great. Item 3A, expenditures prior to, this is 169 to 173. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
174 and 76 is the same thing too. It's in the general fund.
The motion to group and approve A, B, and C. Well, let's just do A and B and then miss. All right, motion. Let's get a motion on the board real quick. We have a motion. Can we get a second for A and B, group and approve?
Second.
All right. Question.
So I got a lot of questions, feedback, emails, phone calls on this courthouse jail maintenance fund. Can we please explain what that fund is, what its purpose is, how it's used,
So that,
etc.?
so that, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Long.
The courthouse and jail maintenance fund is a separate fund for one reason, basically. There is a litigation tax that was from 1981. What the litigation tax says is it will be used for the maintenance of courthouse and jail, except any excess can be used by the county for anything. So what's happened for the last at least 15 years and probably much longer is the courthouse and jail maintenance fund, the litigation tax has been put into this fund, and then they've also put in the commission from inmates. Many years ago, it was put in there to help offset the cost of maintenance for the jail. But it's actually just a general revenue, and it's in there by budget. So what you have is, there's really, for the courthouse and jail maintenance fund, there's one restriction. You have to deal with the courthouse and jail first. Any excess can be used for any other buildings, the way it's set up, based on those, as long as they're within those line items.
So is it safe to say that if funds are being used on other things besides the courthouse or jail, that's been satisfied?
Yep, as long as it's an allowed expense, it's within the budget line items, and it's statutory, then it's fine.
And then, is there any nonprofits funded out of that?
No, there's never been a nonprofit funded out of that fund. And the question I got is if there was any funding to that particular, there's not been any payments to that particular, there's not a profit in that.
Mr. Becker?
Going forward, can we move the excess, instead of spending it directly out of that fund, would it make sense to move the excess to the general purpose fund or some other fund?
Well,
so to eliminate any type of future confusion.
We have money actually over in the general fund too, under the county buildings that we pay where that fund doesn't cover all buildings that are.
Yeah, and that makes it even more confusing.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Makes it
because
more confusing.
A couple of years ago, this fund could not really fund all the costs, so there's another little project.
I would again posit that this is a broader discussion that we need to fix.
I think it needs to be addressed at budget time.
Yeah.
Because this is why we have all these transfers. Every year, they bring back the budget, and we know they put a lot of stuff into construction materials and maintenance contracts, and they move it into other line items twice a year.
Mr. Klein.
I might add that I did walk the jail roof last week. You want to know what the worst roof in the entire county is?
The jail used to be on the list, and it got taken off.
That place has.
It's a litigation tax for jail and courthouse maintenance. It should be a fund for only jail and courthouse.
We got big problems over there.
So let's get back to the motions on the board here. This is for items A and B.
Let me tell you the process that's been going on for 3 years.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a motion on the floor. We did have a motion on the floor, correct? To group and a second. Yeah, go ahead.
These are before the current mayor, because he's been moving them since he's been here, because that's what we discussed, that would be the best policy. Formerly, and this was I didn't really love it, but it's the way the budget committee approved it. They would budget the courthouse and jail and then county buildings under a project for maintenance and repairs of the buildings. They would put a lot of the money into general construction material, and maintenance contracts, they would divide some of it out fairly close. But because there's stuff coming up every day and there's many, many line items, what they would do was they would leave them in there, and if there was like one big project, like, disposal is gonna be over, and all these tiny projects, in lieu of sending them to the budget committee every month with transfer after transfer after transfer, they started sending them down once or twice a year. These are the ones before the current mayor. We've been trying to do them as we go along now, which is the best practice. And even a better practice would be get it closer to the budget cycle, which we fussed about. But that's where all these came from. All the expenditures have been reviewed as they go through. They aren't allowed into the fund. They are for buildings that the county owns, and they did follow all the general policies as far as POs and everything else that was required. The only thing, they just didn't budget them with the right accounts.
Any other discussion?
And to be fair about that too, even if you try to budget in the right accounts, there's a lot of movement from things during the year too.
Sure.
So that's not only.
I hate to sort of ask this, but procedurally, should this go through Gen Ops first?
It never has.
I mean, well, even just because it hasn't, but.
We're creating new, I'm not saying they're bad procedures, but we're creating new procedures, right? So.
These are more maintenance of everyday maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, there is
They've got a couple of guys there that do everything. I mean, they get a bad, I had no idea how
They go to Lowe's to buy stuff to fix buildings all day long.
Yeah, but like all of the valves for the sinks are in one area, and they're pneumatic, and one of those little valves is $70, and they can't buy it at Lowe's. So these two guys are doing everything over there, and they've got electrolysis issues in their water lines and their conduits. It's pretty amazing. So it's very complicated. They have to have the.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess maybe my point is
everything at the jails.
It would be nice if we could sort of make it clear of, because I'm a big proponent of the committee system and sending things through the proper pathway. So I'm definitely not suggesting otherwise. But it would be nice for me to at least to get a better understanding of, buying ink for a library sounds to me sort of like just general maintenance type of stuff that, that I think we just made it a whole lot more complicated than what we're doing here, that's passing straight through. So that's just a comment.
What I was going to say though, and I'm not trying to, but there's like maintenance every day of like everything in the building. If you send that to Gen Ops, it's going to be like they've already got all these, but it's going to be a very large undertaking. When you have the mayor and his staff, they basically have, how many maintenance men? 1, 2, 3.
I get the.
Plus his staff, plus the jail staff are all running.
I get the
stuff
point,
every
Mr.
day.
Becker. I think the issue is that was a total restructuring of a budget, a relatively small one overall, as opposed to, that's not exactly this. But, Mr. Mayor, did you have a note? Any other discussion here? All right, the motion on the table is to group and approve items A and B. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Miscellaneous transfers, I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve.
Second. All right, Mr. Long, there is one item in here that I think it's the $60,000 item that deserves a look.
And it required a transfer because this has been under maintenance for many years. It was bid as a multi-year maintenance, but what happened was, it's a 5-year maintenance contract. We wanted the subject to appropriation language. So when they took over this maintenance contract, there were several repairs that had to be done. And if we were wanting subject to appropriation, basically it had to be appropriated by the county commission. We had to have to drop them. They wanted to recover more of their costs up front for all the repairs. So what they did is they increased their first year costs and decreased their other 5-year costs. So it weighed out about the same cost, but they wanted more up front for us to do it this way. And that's why we resulted in a transfer.
Is that understandable, everybody?
Which one is it?
This is
This is $60,000.
Last page. That last
the
page is
60.
60,000.
The
And that was,
6126.
they wanted more up front to make sure they recovered the investment if we wanted a right to drop out of it. And it appeared to be in the county's best interest to have the right to drop out.
I mean, it's locking mechanisms for the jail.
Yeah,
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, we do have a motion too.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this?
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. There's one motion left.
Second.
All in favor? Motion adjourned.
Dan,
All right.
I've got these already.